The truck had been gone for 41 minutes when the Pentagon called our dispatch office and asked one question nobody in that building could answer. Who authorized the shipment? By then, I was sitting in my pickup across the street from Ironvale Precision Systems with my badge in a plastic security envelope on the passenger seat and a termination receipt folded in my shirt pocket. The receipt said 10:14 a.m. The loading gate log said Shipment 7B 419 rolled out of Dock 4 at 10:22. The Pentagon verification call came in at 11:03. 8 minutes. That was the gap Vanessa Cole never bothered to understand. 8 minutes between firing the only defense shipment compliance manager in the building and sending a $312 million guidance assembly order onto Interstate 75 like it was a pallet of office chairs. My name is Caleb Mercer. I am 46 years old, and for 19 years my job was making sure Ironvale Precision Systems did not confuse speed with authorization. We built precision components for defense navigation systems, the kind of work where every label, seal, heat treatment certificate, custody transfer, and release signature had to line up exactly. Not mostly, not eventually. Exactly. Most people in operations thought I was the man with the clipboard who slowed trucks down. That was fine. The clipboard had saved more contracts than Vanessa's entire leadership team had ever won. The morning she fired me, the factory floor smelled like cutting oil, hot metal, and burnt coffee from the break room near Line C. Forklifts were moving in narrow lanes marked with yellow paint. Red status lights blinked over Dock 4 because Shipment 7B 419 was still under administrative hold. I had placed that hold at 9:48 a.m. after Priya Nundakumar from Quality Assurance flagged a missing cross signature on one batch certificate. It was not a disaster. It was not even unusual. It was exactly why the hold process existed. You stop the shipment, fix the paperwork, verify the batch, and release clean. Then Vanessa walked out of the glass operations office in a white blazer and safety glasses she had not worn long enough to smudge. She carried a tablet like it gave her legal authority. Behind her came two supervisors, one HR manager, and a security guard named Luis who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. She did not ask me into a conference room. She did not lower her voice. She stopped 10 feet from the inspection table and said, "Caleb, we are done letting one man turn every shipment into a federal ceremony." The line went quiet in stages. First the packers stopped talking. Then the forklift driver eased off the throttle. Then Priya lowered her blue pen and looked at me. Vanessa smiled the way executives smile when they have already rehearsed the sentence in their car. "Your position is being eliminated for operational obstruction, effective immediately." I looked at the red hold light over Dock 4, then at the tablet in her hand. "Check the release code," I said. "I am not debating process with you on my factory floor," she said. Her factory floor. She had been at Ironvale for 11 weeks. I had watched that same floor survive 3 ownership changes, 2 Pentagon audits, a supplier shutdown, and 1 winter storm that froze half of Toledo before sunrise. I did not argue. I did not raise my voice. I removed my badge, placed it on top of my black clipboard, and asked HR for a time-stamped termination receipt. Vanessa gave a short laugh. "You really do love paperwork." "Only when it matters," I said. She waved Luis forward. He sealed my badge in an evidence-style bag because that was our access protocol, even when leadership forgot why protocols existed. I signed the receipt at 10:14 a.m. Then I looked once more at Dock 4, where Shipment 7B 419 was still glowing red on the bay monitor. "That hold protects the contract," I told her. Vanessa stepped closer and lowered her voice just enough to sound dangerous without sounding unprofessional. "No, Caleb, that hold protects your ego." I picked up my coat, left the clipboard on the inspection table, and walked past 2 rows of workers who knew better than to say a word. As I reached the side exit, I heard Vanessa tell the dock supervisor, "Override it and get that truck moving." I stopped for half a second, not long enough for anyone to call it hesitation. Then I pushed the door open and stepped into the cold Ohio air. 8 minutes later, the truck left. 41 minutes after that, the Pentagon asked who authorized it. 2 weeks before the call from the Pentagon, Vanessa Cole walked onto the production floor with a stopwatch in one hand and a consultant from Boston in the other, and I knew before she opened her mouth that she had mistaken a defense plant for a warehouse. She had been hired as Vice President of Operations after Daniel Whitaker promised the board a 12% reduction in fulfillment time before the end of the quarter. That phrase, fulfillment time, was the first warning sign. We did not fulfill orders at Iron Veil. We released controlled components under federal contract requirements. There was a difference, and that difference was written into hundreds of pages of inspection standards, custody procedures, and delivery authorizations that nobody upstairs seemed interested in reading. Vanessa did not introduce herself to the floor leads. She timed them. She stood near line C in polished boots that had never met a puddle of hydraulic fluid and clicked her stopwatch every time someone scanned a part, filled out a form, or waited for quality assurance. 27 seconds for a label verification, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. That is not compliance. That is waste with a badge. A few supervisors gave nervous smiles because people smile when they know a new executive is testing the room. I kept writing on my release checklist. Priya Nandakumar stood beside me with her blue pin tucked behind her ear, reviewing batch certificates for an upcoming shipment. She glanced at me once, the way quality people do when they hear someone powerful say something dangerous. Vanessa stopped at my inspection table and looked down at my clipboard. You are Caleb Mercer. Yes, ma'am. Defense shipment compliance. That is right. She tapped the top page with one red fingernail. I have been studying the outbound process. You personally touch every high-value shipment before it leaves. Not personally, procedurally. She smiled. That sounds like yes with more syllables. The consultant laughed. Nobody else did. I closed the binder slowly, not because I was angry, but because I wanted my hands still. Anything under a Pentagon delivery milestone requires documented release authority, chain of custody confirmation, quality cross-signature, packaging compliance, and pre-shipment verification. My name is on the authority matrix because the board approved it after the 2019 audit. Vanessa tilted her head like she was listening to a person explain why candles were better than electricity. Caleb, I came from commercial logistics. I have moved more freight in one quarter than this plant moves in a year. I believe you. Then believe me when I say your process is too slow. Commercial freight can be corrected with a credit memo. Defense freight creates a record. Her smile thinned. That was the first time I saw the real Vanessa, not the executive version from the welcome email. She did not mind being questioned. She minded being corrected by someone she had already classified as old infrastructure. Later that afternoon, she held a leadership session in Conference Room B with a slide deck titled Velocity Without Friction. My name appeared on slide 9 under the heading Approval Bottlenecks. Not department, not process. Me, Caleb Mercer. One name in yellow, inside a red box, like I was a defective part waiting to be removed. Daniel Whitaker sat at the head of the table, expression flat, saying nothing. Vanessa explained that Iron Veil needed decision compression, which meant fewer people saying no. She proposed renaming the defense shipment authorization workflow to outbound fulfillment approval because, in her words, language drives culture. That was when I stopped looking at the slides and started looking at legal counsel, who was flipping through the printed packet with a crease between his eyebrows. After the meeting, I went back to my desk and opened the system change log. The label had already been changed in the dashboard. Defense shipment authorization was gone. Outbound fulfillment approval sat in its place, clean and harmless, like a fresh coat of paint over a warning sign. The underlying federal registry had not changed, of course. It still required an authorized compliance release tied to my credential and a verified quality signature. But Vanessa had made the screen look simpler, and simple screens make reckless people feel safe. I printed the change log, dated it, signed the bottom corner, and placed it in my black clipboard behind the current week release sheets. Priya saw me do it and asked, "You think this is going somewhere bad?" I looked through the glass wall toward Vanessa's office, where she was laughing with two supervisors who wanted promotions. "No," I said. "I think it is already there." By the morning shipment 7B 419 reached my table, Vanessa's new dashboard had already made 3 supervisors braver than their training allowed. The screen no longer said defense shipment authorization. It said outbound fulfillment approval in soft blue letters, like we were clearing printer toner instead of precision guidance assemblies for a Pentagon delivery milestone. I arrived at 6:18 a.m., 22 minutes before first shift, carrying gas station coffee and the same black clipboard I had used since the 2019 audit. Dock 4 was scheduled for a 10 a.m. departure, which meant every certificate had to be cleaned by 9:30 and every custody transfer had to be locked before the trailer seal was applied. That was not my preference. That was the release plan Iron Veil had submitted when it accepted the contract. The plant was already awake when I walked in. Air compressors kicked on behind line C. A forklift backed toward the crating area with its warning tone echoing off the steel walls. The assembly sat in 6 gray shipping containers near Dock 4, each one stenciled with a lot number, gross weight, handling code, and custody tag. They looked ordinary if you did not know what you were seeing. To me, they looked like responsibility stacked 4 feet high on reinforced pallets. Priya Nandakumar was at the inspection table with a folder open and her blue pen moving in tight circles. That was never good. Priya did not dramatize mistakes. She marked them, verified them, and fixed them before anyone upstairs could convert them into a meeting. Batch C17, she said when I reached the table. No hello, no small talk, just the problem. I set down my coffee and leaned over the certificate. The heat treatment record had been completed by the supplier, received by our materials team, and scanned into the local archive, but the final cross-signature from quality assurance was missing. Not rejected, not failed, missing. There is a difference. A missing signature does not mean the part is bad. It means the record is incomplete, and incomplete records do not ride on federal shipments because incomplete records become questions, questions become holds, and holds become people in suits asking why leadership thought a deadline was more important than traceability. Who released it from materials? I asked. Priya slid the intake sheet across the table. Evan Pruitt. He thought quality had already cleared the full batch. I looked toward the materials cage, where Evan was pretending not to watch us. Good kid. Too new to understand how much damage a harmless assumption could do. Did you tell operations? I sent the note at 7:12. Response. Priya tapped her pen against the folder once. Vanessa said to correct it after shipment because the batch is physically conforming. I read the message twice, then a third time because I wanted to be sure my irritation did not outrun the facts. Correct it after shipment. For words that sounded efficient until a federal contracting officer asked why the record was not complete when the truck left the dock. I opened the authorization screen, selected shipment 7B419, and placed it under administrative hold at 9:48 a.m. The bay monitor above Dock 4 turned from amber to red. A line supervisor named Mark Delaney noticed first. He walked over with his radio clipped to his vest, and that tired look supervisors get when they can already hear an executive yelling in their future. Caleb, tell me that is temporary. It is temporary if quality gets the cross-signature before release. Vanessa wants wheels up at 10. Then Vanessa wants quality cleared before 10. He exhaled through his nose. You know how this is going to land. Yes, I said. On paper. At 9:56, Vanessa appeared from the operations office walking fast enough to make people step aside. She did not look at the containers, the certificate, or the red monitor. She looked at me. That told me everything. Why is my shipment on hold? She asked. Batch C17 is missing quality cross-signature. Is the product defective? That is not the question. It is my question. Then it is the wrong one. Her face changed. Not much, just enough for Priya to lower her eyes to the folder. Vanessa hated being corrected in front of hourly employees. She turned the tablet toward me, showing her clean blue dashboard. The system says this is an outbound approval delay. The Federal Registry says it is a compliance hold. I need you to remove it. I cannot, or will not. I capped my pen and looked at the red light over Dock 4. Both, until the record is complete. For a few seconds, the floor noise seemed to pull away from us. Then Vanessa smiled, small and polished. Then maybe the problem is not the shipment. She looked past me toward Mark Delaney. Find out who can remove Caleb's approval dependency. Mark did not move. Priya's pen stopped. I opened my clipboard, printed the hold confirmation, and placed it behind Vanessa's dashboard changelog. The paper was warm from the printer when I signed the bottom corner. At the top, in plain black text, it said administrative hold active. That was the last clean warning Iron Veil received before Vanessa decided the red light was only a suggestion. Vanessa did not fire me immediately after Mark refused to move. That would have made her look emotional, and Vanessa Cole was careful about appearances. She took a slower route, the executive route. First, she asked Priya whether the missing cross signature affected physical conformity. Priya said the batch could not be released until the record was complete. Vanessa repeated the question with different words, then a third time with a sharper tone, hoping the answer would become more convenient if she applied enough pressure. It did not. Priya kept her voice even and said, "Quality cannot clear what quality has not signed." That was when Vanessa looked at me again. Not at the shipment. Not at the red hold light. At me. "You trained them to talk like this," she said. I almost smiled, but I did not give her the satisfaction. I trained them to document what is true. By 10:06, a small crowd had formed without meaning to. Line C packers kept working slower than usual. Two machinists stood near the parts washer pretending to check a gauge. Evan Pruitt hovered by the materials cage with the expression of someone realizing his name was now attached to something larger than a form. The plant was loud, but the space around Doc 4 had gone strangely still. Vanessa noticed the audience. That was her second mistake. People like Vanessa can tolerate resistance in private. Public resistance feels like infection to them. She turned her tablet around and showed me the new dashboard again, as if a softer label could erase a federal requirement. This says outbound fulfillment approval, not federal release, not Pentagon ceremony. Approval, and I am approving it. Operations approval is not compliance authorization. I am Vice President of Operations. Yes, that means I outrank you. On the organization chart. Her jaw tightened. Mark Delaney stared at the floor. Priya clicked her pen once, then stopped when Vanessa looked her way. I had seen this moment before in other forums, with other executives, under other company logos. The point where they stopped trying to understand the rule and started trying to overpower the person explaining it. Vanessa stepped closer to the inspection table and lowered her voice just enough to make it sound controlled. "Caleb, this plant has missed 2 internal delivery targets this quarter because your department treats every truck like it is carrying launch codes. It is carrying controlled defense components. It is carrying machined assemblies in gray boxes. Those gray boxes are tied to a custody chain the Pentagon can audit down to the minute. Then we will give them the minutes. Not if the authority is invalid." That word did it. Invalid. She glanced toward the workers, then toward Luis from security, who had arrived near the time clock with an uneasy look on his face. Beside him stood Dana from Human Resources holding a folder against her chest. I knew the folder. I had seen enough reorganization days to recognize the clean white tab and the careful lack of eye contact. Vanessa had planned this. Maybe not for that exact minute, but close enough. She wanted the hold gone, and if I would not remove it, she would remove me. Dana opened the folder and read from a page that sounded like it had been written by 3 attorneys and a spreadsheet. My position was being eliminated due to operational restructuring. My duties would be redistributed under a streamlined release model. My access would be disabled immediately. Effective time, 10:14 a.m. I asked for the receipt before she finished speaking. Vanessa gave a short, disbelieving laugh. "That is your reaction?" "Yes." No argument. No. No speech about how the company cannot function without you. I removed my badge from the clip on my belt and placed it on the clipboard. The company can function without me. The registry cannot accept my authorization after you terminate me. She looked annoyed, not concerned. That was the difference between ignorance and arrogance. Ignorance asks a question. Arrogance waves the question away. Luis stepped forward and sealed my badge in a plastic access envelope. Dana handed me the termination receipt. I checked the time, signed my name, and folded the paper once. Vanessa watched like she expected my hands to shake. They did not. I had signed inspection holds during power outages, supplier failures, snow emergencies, and audits where federal reviewers stood close enough to read over my shoulder. Signing one more piece of paper did not scare me. What worried me was Doc 4. The monitor was still red. Shipment 7B419 was still under administrative hold. Batch C17 was still missing the quality cross-signature. The Federal Registry still listed me as the Authorized Compliance Release Officer. And now, according to Iron Veil's own Human Resources timestamp, I was no longer employed. I picked up my coat. Priya looked at me, and for half a second I saw the question in her face. Should I stop this? I gave her the smallest shake of my head. Not because it was fine, because it was already documented. Vanessa mistook that silence for surrender. "Mark," she said, loud enough for the entire dock to hear. "Override the hold and release the truck." Mark looked at the red screen. Vanessa, I do not think that is the same as authorization. I did not ask what you think. I asked you to move freight. I paused at the side exit with my hand on the push bar. Behind me, I heard the scanner chirp, then the low mechanical clank of dock for preparing to open. That sound told me Vanessa had just crossed from bad management into a record she could not edit. Because the problem was not the truck, or the missing signature, or even my termination. The real problem was hidden one layer deeper, in the Pentagon verification schedule that ran automatically after departure. Vanessa thought she had 41 minutes to celebrate making me irrelevant. What she actually had was 41 minutes before a federal system asked a question her new dashboard had been designed not to answer. I did not leave the parking lot. That was the part Vanessa never understood later, when people started asking whether I had planned the whole thing from the beginning. I had not planned anything except the process she had interrupted. I did not call the Pentagon. I did not call Daniel Whitaker. I did not call legal, contracts, quality, or anyone in dispatch. I walked across the visitor lot, got into my gray Silverado, placed the sealed badge envelope on the passenger seat, and sat there with both hands on the steering wheel while the plant kept moving behind me. Through the chain-link fence, I could see Dock 4 from an angle. The overhead door was open. The trailer was backed in. The red bay monitor was too far away to read, but I knew what it said because I had printed the hold confirmation myself. Administrative hold active. That phrase was not dramatic. It did not sound like a crisis. It sounded like what it was. A pause until the record caught up with the metal. At 10:18, my phone buzzed. It was Priya. I let it ring once, then sent it to voicemail. Not because I did not trust her, because anything I said in that moment could become noise, and the record was already cleaner than any conversation would be. At 10:21, the trailer seal was scanned. I knew the timing because our dock system sent automated notices to the release authority for any controlled shipment under that contract. My access had been disabled, but email forwarding for compliance notices did not shut off instantly. Iron Veil had always been sloppy about removing old notification rules. I had complained about it 6 times. No one cared until that morning. At 10:22, the truck rolled out. White cab, blue stripe, trailer number 8947, moving slowly past the guard booth toward the main road. I watched it turn right onto the service lane and head for Interstate 75. My coffee had gone cold in the cup holder. The termination receipt in my pocket felt heavier than the badge I no longer had. I took it out and read it again. Effective immediately, 10:14 a.m. Dana from Human Resources had signed it. I had signed below her. Clean timestamp. Clean chain. Clean mistake. People think moments like that feel satisfying if you know someone has made an error. They do not. They feel like watching a valve left open on a machine you spent years keeping safe. You do not want the pressure to build. You just know pressure does not care who ignored the gauge. At 10:29, a second notification hit my phone. Shipment departure recorded. Release method, operational override. Authorized user, Vanessa Cole. I stared at that line for a long time. Operational override was designed for internal routing mistakes, wrong dock assignment, damaged label, duplicate scan, simple plant floor corrections. It was never designed to replace defense compliance authorization. The system allowed it because Vanessa had changed the dashboard language 2 weeks earlier, but the Federal Registry still knew the difference. Screens lie politely. Registries do not. At 10:36, Priya called again. This time she left a message. I did not play it. I could imagine her voice, quiet and tight, probably telling me Vanessa had ordered the truck out, probably asking what happened next. What happened next was not up to me. It was up to a verification schedule created after the 2019 audit, when the Pentagon required automatic post-departure confirmation for any shipment above a classified value threshold. Iron Veil hated that schedule because it added a federal checkpoint after departure. I liked it because it made pretending impossible. At 10:47, the plant looked normal from the outside. Shift traffic moved through the employee gate. A vendor van pulled up near receiving. Someone from maintenance smoked near the far fence, looking at his phone. Inside, I knew Vanessa was probably telling people the bottleneck had been handled. Maybe Daniel Whitaker had already heard. Maybe he had not. Executives have a talent for being unavailable during the exact minutes their decisions become evidence. At 10:58, I finally played Priya's voicemail. She said only 6 words. Caleb. She used her own override. I deleted nothing. Saved the message. At 11:03, I saw the first sign. Not on my phone. On the building. The glass office above the factory floor changed. People who usually moved with lazy confidence started crossing behind the windows fast. One person, then three, then five. At 11:05, my phone rang from Ironvale's main number. I let it go. At 11:06, it rang again, this time from Mark Delaney. I let that go too. At 11:08, Daniel Whitaker's executive assistant called. That one made me look through the windshield and almost laugh. Not because anything was funny, but because silence has a way of teaching rank what procedure tried to explain. I answered on the fourth ring. Her voice was careful. Too careful. Mr. Mercer, are you available to join an urgent call with Mr. Whitaker and legal? I looked at the badge envelope on my passenger seat, then at the plant where Dock 4 was now closed and quiet. That depends, I said. Am I still terminated? She did not answer right away. In the pause, I heard muffled voices behind her, and one of them was Vanessa's, no longer polished, no longer amused. Then the assistant came back on the line and said, "The Pentagon has requested clarification on Shipment 7B419. I folded the termination receipt along its original crease and placed it on the dashboard. Clarification, I said. That is a good word for it. I told the assistant I would join the call, but only as a former employee answering questions about records created before my termination. She went quiet again, and I could hear someone whispering in the background. That detail mattered. Legal people whisper when they realize normal words have consequences. 30 seconds later, a conference link arrived by text. I did not click it right away. I took a picture of the termination receipt, placed it beside the sealed badge envelope, and set both on my dashboard where the morning light made the timestamps clear. Then I joined from my phone, parked across the street from the building where I had worked for 19 years. Nobody said hello. The screen opened on Conference Room B. Daniel Whitaker sat at the head of the table in a navy suit, jaw locked, both hands flat on the polished wood. Beside him was Marcia Klein from legal, wearing the expression of a person who had already read enough to know the day was going to get expensive. Vanessa stood near the wall with her tablet against her chest. She looked composed at first, but composed is not the same as calm. Mark Delaney sat 3 chairs down, eyes on the table. Priya was there too, with the Batch C-17 folder closed in front of her and her blue pen resting perfectly parallel to the edge. A voice I did not recognize came through the speaker. "Mr. Mercer, this is Angela Rees with the Pentagon Contracting Office. We are confirming authority chain for Ironvale Shipment 7B419. Were you the listed compliance release authority as of this morning?" I looked at the receipt on my dashboard. Until 10:14 a.m., yes. Marcia closed her eyes for half a second. Daniel turned toward Vanessa. Angela continued, careful and neutral. "Our registry shows your credential tied to the pending hold placed at 9:48 a.m. It also shows shipment departure at 10:22 a.m. Can you confirm whether you released that hold before departure?" "No, ma'am." "Did you delegate release authority to Vanessa Cole?" "No, ma'am." "Did you delegate release authority to Mark Delaney?" "No, ma'am." Vanessa stepped forward. "Angela, this is an internal workflow issue. We had operational approval to move the freight." Angela did not raise her voice. Federal officials rarely have to. "Miss Cole, I am not asking whether freight moved. I am asking who authorized controlled shipment release under the contract authority matrix." Vanessa blinked, and for the first time since I had met her, she did not answer immediately. Daniel leaned toward the speaker. "Angela, we are reviewing the internal sequence now. The components are physically conforming." Priya's pen shifted 1 inch. Angela said, "Physical conformity is one part of release. We are also showing an unresolved quality cross-signature on batch C-17 at the time of departure." That was when the room changed. Not loudly. No one shouted. No one stood up. But every person at that table understood the circle had widened. This was no longer about me being fired, or Vanessa being aggressive, or a red light at Dock 4. The Pentagon had seen the missing quality record too. Marcia opened a laptop and began typing fast. Daniel looked at Priya. "Is that true?" Priya took 1 breath. "Yes. I notified operations at 7:12 a.m. The batch was not rejected, but the release record was incomplete." Vanessa said, "And you told me it was physically conforming." Priya looked at her directly. "I told you quality had not cleared the record." Silence. Clean, heavy silence. The kind no executive can PowerPoint away. Angela spoke again. Iron Veil is instructed to freeze onward movement of shipment 7B419 until written clarification is accepted. Provide chain of custody logs, hold history, override record, termination timestamp for Mr. Mercer, and documentation supporting any claim transfer of release authority. Marcia stopped typing. By when? Today. Daniel's face lost color in a way only people who understand contract deadlines can appreciate. Vanessa looked down at her tablet, probably searching for the blue dashboard that had made all of this look harmless 2 hours earlier. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. She had believed authority was a title. The registry believed authority was a record. Angela asked one final question. Mr. Mercer, when you left the facility, was the shipment still under administrative hold? I looked through the windshield at Iron Veil's front sign, the same brushed steel letters I had passed before sunrise for nearly 2 decades. Yes, ma'am. The hold was active when I was escorted out. I have the printed confirmation in my clipboard. Marcia looked up sharply. Where is the clipboard? I paused. Not long, just enough for the room to feel it. On the inspection table at Dock 4, I said, unless someone moved it after I was terminated. Priya's chair scraped softly. Through the screen, I watched her stand. Vanessa did not move. Daniel did. Get the clipboard, he said. Priya found the clipboard exactly where I had left it, on the stainless steel inspection table beside the tape dispenser and the roll of orange hold tags. That mattered more than it sounded like it should. A document left in place is a record. A document moved after the fact becomes a question. Through the phone screen, I watched her return to conference room, be carrying it with both hands, like the thing weighed more than plastic and paper. Vanessa stared at it the way people stare at a locked door after realizing they threw away the key. Priya set it in front of Marcia Klein. Marcia did not open it immediately. She photographed the cover first, then the table, then the time on the conference room clock. Legal people do that when they stop trusting memory. Daniel Whitaker leaned back in his chair, but his eyes stayed on Vanessa. Walk me through the override, he said. Vanessa lifted her chin. The shipment was delayed by an internal approval hold that did not reflect product condition. That is not what I asked. I used the operations override available in the dashboard. After Mr. Mercer was terminated, the timing was incidental. I almost said something, but I let the room do its work. Silence is useful when the facts are already louder than you are. Marcia opened the clipboard. First came Vanessa's dashboard change log from 2 weeks earlier, the one showing defense shipment authorization, renamed as outbound fulfillment approval. Then came the hold confirmation from 9:48 a.m. with my signature at the bottom corner. Then Priya's quality note from 7:12 a.m. identifying the missing cross signature on batch C17. Then the release checklist, incomplete by exactly 1 box. Marcia placed each page on the table in order. Nobody interrupted her. When she reached the last page, she looked at me through the screen. Caleb, did you prepare these copies this morning? Yes. Why? Because the dashboard label changed, but the contract requirement did not. Daniel turned toward Vanessa slowly. You changed the label? Vanessa looked at Marcia instead of him, which was another mistake. We modernized the workflow terminology. Marcia tapped the first page, without changing the underlying authority matrix. That was information technology configuration. No, Priya said quietly. Everyone looked at her. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Information technology changed the display label because operations requested it. The authority matrix stayed the same because compliance did not approve a transfer. Vanessa's face hardened. You were copied on the rollout. I was copied on a name change, not an authority transfer. Daniel rubbed one hand over his mouth. That was the first sign he understood the board would ask why his vice president had converted a federal control point into a productivity metric. Marcia turned her laptop toward the room. The audit trail confirms the sequence. Hold placed at 9:48 by Caleb Mercer. Termination entered at 10:14 by Human Resources. Badge disabled at 10:16. Trailer seal scanned at 10:21. Operational override entered at 10:22 by Vanessa Cole. Departure logged at 10:22. Pentagon verification at 11:03. She paused after every timestamp, and each pause landed harder than an accusation. Vanessa crossed her arms. The shipment had to move. We were under a delivery milestone, and now it is frozen under federal clarification, Marcia said. Because you moved it wrong. That was the first direct sentence anyone had thrown at Vanessa all day. She looked at Daniel, probably expecting rank to protect rank. But Daniel was no longer looking at her like an executive with a delivery problem. He was looking at her like a liability with a company email address. Then Angela Reeves from the Pentagon spoke again through the speaker. She had stayed quiet while Iron Veil exposed itself. For the record, Iron Veil will provide all documentation by close of business. Until accepted, Shipment 7B419 remains under hold. Any further movement requires written federal clearance. The words "further movement" landed in the room like a locked gate. That meant the truck was not simply delayed. It meant every mile after the freeze became a new risk, every custody handoff became a question, and every person who touched the file after 1014 became part of the review. Daniel understood that immediately. Where is the truck now? Mark checked his radio, then his phone. Northbound, about 11 miles from the transfer yard. Stop it before it gets there, Daniel said. Do it clean. Document the stop. No improvising. Vanessa started to speak. Daniel, if we miss the transfer window. He cut her off without raising his voice. You already missed the authority window. That was when the room finally went completely still. Not because the problem was solved. Because everyone understood it had grown teeth. Marcia looked at Priya. Pull every warning ticket tied to this dashboard rollout. Priya hesitated for 1 second, then opened the folder she had brought with her. I already did. Vanessa's head turned. Priya slid 3 printed tickets across the table, each one marked closed by operations without compliance review. I watched Daniel read the first page, then the second. By the third, he was not angry anymore. He was calculating. That was worse for Vanessa. Anger fades. Calculation becomes minutes, signatures, board packets, and governance review. Daniel looked back at the speakerphone. Angela, we may have a broader process issue. Vanessa whispered, that is not fair. I looked at the red termination receipt on my dashboard and said nothing. Fair had left the building at 1014. The record stayed behind. By 8:30 the next morning, Iron Veil's boardroom looked less like a meeting space and more like a place where excuses came to die. The long table had been cleared of coffee cups, marketing packets, and the small leather coasters Daniel Whitaker liked to arrange when he wanted to look relaxed. In their place were printed timelines, access logs, quality tickets, contract excerpts, and my black clipboard, sitting in the center like an old tool nobody respected until the machine stopped working. I had been invited back through the front entrance, not the employee gate. That was Daniel's idea, or Marcia Klein's. Either way, it told me legal had chosen language carefully. I was not being reinstated. I was being asked to provide subject matter clarification. Security issued me a visitor badge at 8:17 a.m. Luis handed it over without meeting my eyes. Morning, Caleb, he said. Morning, Luis. For what it is worth, I hated yesterday. Me too. That was all. No speeches in the lobby. No victory lap past the time clocks. I rode the elevator to the second floor with Marcia and said nothing while she reviewed her notes. When we entered the boardroom, Vanessa was already there, seated halfway down the table with her tablet flat in front of her. She looked smaller without the factory floor around her. Not weak, just correctly sized. Daniel sat at the head. 2 board members had joined by video. Priya was there with 3 folders stacked neatly by her elbow. Mark Delaney sat near the door, hands folded, looking like a man who had spent the night replaying one bad instruction. Marcia opened the meeting by stating that Iron Veil was conducting an internal governance review related to Shipment 7B419, the dashboard authority change, and compliance release controls. Then she turned to me. Mr. Mercer, please explain the release sequence in operational terms. I stood beside the wall screen, not at the head of the table. Position matters in rooms like that. I was not there to command. I was there to make the record understandable. A shipment like this has 3 separate gates, I said. Quality verifies the product record. Compliance verifies the release authority. Custody verifies the physical movement. If any one of those is incomplete, the truck waits. One board member leaned toward his camera. Was the product defective? No evidence of that. Vanessa's eyes lifted, like she had found oxygen. I kept going. But physical condition was never the only issue. The record was incomplete, so the release was incomplete. Defense contracts do not treat those as separate after departure. Priya slid the batch C17 folder toward Marcia. I moved to the timeline. At 7:12 a.m., quality notified operations of the missing cross signature. At 9:48, I placed administrative hold. At 10:14, Iron Veil terminated me. At 10:16, my badge was disabled. At 10:21, the trailer seal was scanned. At 10:22, Miss Cole entered an operational override. At 11:03, federal verification rejected the authority chain. I did not add adjectives. I did not need them. Timelines are cruel when people have been careless. Vanessa finally spoke. I made a business decision under delivery pressure. Marcia looked at her. You made a release decision after removing the release officer. Because the release officer refused to support operations. I turned one page on the screen. The hold did support operations. It protected the delivery from being questioned after departure. Daniel stared at the timestamps. And if the truck had reached the transfer yard, then the custody chain would have expanded to a third-party carrier under an unresolved authority defect. More signatures, more records, more people pulled into the clarification. The room absorbed that, quietly, permanently. Then Priya opened her top folder. There is more. Vanessa looked at her with pure warning in her eyes, but Priya had already chosen the record over the room. After the dashboard rollout, operations closed 3 compliance warning tickets without review. One involved a seal mismatch. One involved a missing supplier attestation. One involved an attempted shipment schedule change before quality release. Marcia took the pages. Daniel did not. He just looked at Vanessa. Did you know about these? Vanessa's answer came too fast. Those were minor workflow cleanup items. Priya shook her head once. They were warning tickets. I watched Daniel's face change as he understood the real shape of the problem. Yesterday was not a single bad call. It was a pattern with timestamps. Marcia opened the final attachment, and that was the turn Vanessa did not see coming. The 3 closed tickets were not the most dangerous part. Each closure had been copied to the same person in executive reporting, a name no one had mentioned yet, Daniel Whitaker. The room went silent around him now, too. Vanessa had not just bypassed compliance. She had been sending proof upward for 10 days, wrapped in productivity language, and the chief executive officer had let the green metrics pass because they made the quarter look better. Daniel slowly removed his glasses. The board member on screen said, "We need to discuss executive awareness." Vanessa turned toward Daniel like he could still save her. He did not look back. That was the moment I understood the review had moved above her. The board did not fire Vanessa in that room. Companies rarely do clean things while everyone is watching. They recessed the meeting for executive session, which is corporate language for the part where people stop performing and start protecting the institution. Marcia asked me to wait in the small conference room near legal. Priya waited with me. Neither of us said much. Through the glass wall, I could see people moving between offices with folders pressed to their chests, phones held low, faces stiff with the special panic that arrives when yesterday's shortcut becomes today's board packet. Priya sat across from me and rolled her blue pen between her fingers. "I should have pushed harder," she said. "You pushed enough to make a record. That does not feel like enough. It rarely does at first." At 11:40 a.m., Marcia came in with Daniel behind her. He looked 10 years older than he had that morning. Not broken. Corrected. There is a difference. He closed the door and stood for a moment before speaking. "The board is opening a formal governance review. Vanessa has been removed from operational authority pending outcome. The dashboard terminology change is being reversed today. All controlled shipments are frozen until compliance and quality revalidate the release matrix." He said it like a man reading bad weather from a report. Then he looked at me. "We need you to return." I glanced at the visitor badge clipped to my jacket. "You terminated me yesterday." Daniel did not flinch. "Yes." "On the factory floor." "Yes." "After I placed a valid hold." He swallowed once. "Yes." That was the closest thing to an apology I expected from Daniel Whitaker. Men like him do not kneel. They amend procedures. Marcia slid a folder across the table. Inside was an offer letter for Director of Defense Compliance and Release Authority, with a salary correction, back pay for the termination gap, written board-level authority over release controls, and a clause stating operations could not override controlled shipment holds without compliance and quality approval. I read every page. Slowly. Daniel waited. Priya watched the pen stop moving in her hand. "This protects the position," I said. "Not just me." Marcia nodded. "That was intentional. I signed nothing that day." I took the folder home, showed it to my wife, called an employment attorney, and gave Ironvale 48 hours to clean up the language. When I returned the following Monday, Vanessa's office was empty. No announcement, no dramatic scene, no cardboard box parade. Her name simply vanished from the operations directory, replaced by interim reporting lines and one sentence from Human Resources about leadership transition. That was how corporate consequences usually sounded. Quiet enough for people to pretend they were not consequences. Shipment 7B419 came back to Dock 4 under documented stop order, not panic. Priya completed the batch C17 review, found the parts physically conforming, obtained the missing cross-signature, and logged the correction cleanly. Mark Delaney rescanned the trailer seal under a new custody chain. The Pentagon accepted Ironvale's clarification 3 days later, but not without conditions. Enhanced oversight for 90 days. Weekly release reports. Mandatory authority matrix review. Nobody upstairs liked it. I did. Oversight is only frightening when you have been relying on darkness. Daniel kept his title, but the board added a compliance reporting line that bypassed him. That was the part no one said out loud on the floor, but everyone understood. Vanessa had made the wrong call, but Daniel had enjoyed the green metrics until the red consequences arrived. The system had answered both of them. Priya became director of quality systems before the end of the month. Mark started sending me hold questions before touching overrides. Luis still worked security, and every time he saw my new badge, he gave it a careful second look, like the plastic had earned respect. As for me, I went back to the same floor, the same Dock 4, the same smell of cutting oil and burnt coffee. The black clipboard returned to its hook beside the inspection table. Someone had cleaned it while I was gone, which made me smile for the first time in days. Around 10:22 that Monday, I stood under the bay monitor and watched it turn green only after every signature, every certificate, every custody field, and every authority line matched. No applause, no speech, just a truck leaving the right way. That was enough. People asked later if I felt vindicated. I told them vindication is too loud a word for what happened. I did not beat Vanessa. I did not save Ironvale by myself. I did not bring the Pentagon down on anyone. I placed a hold, kept the record clean, and let the system show everyone what their titles could not hide. They fired me in front of the factory because they thought procedure was paperwork. 41 minutes later, procedure introduced itself as the only voice in the building that still knew the truth.